It was an attempt to bully jurisdictions like San Francisco and Santa Clara into abandoning their sanctuary city policies by the use of an unconstitutional executive order.
San Francisco, one of the cities that sued the government over its threat to pull funding for sanctuary cities. Those are municipalities that will not use local police to enforce federal immigration laws. Now, a federal judge just blocked the administration's efforts to starve those places of cash. Most of the largest cities in America, including New York, fall into that category. Now, the judge used the president's own words against him. Here, part of the ruling, quote, "If there was doubt about the scope of the order, the President and Attorney General have erased it with their public comments. Federal funding that bears no meaningful relationship to immigration enforcement cannot be threatened merely because a jurisdiction chooses an immigration enforcement strategy of which the President disapproves," end quote. Now, he was talking about comments like these.
So defunding is your weapon of choice.
Well, it's a weapon. I don't want to defund a state or a city. I don't want to defund anybody. I want to give them the money they need to properly operate as a city or a state. If they're going to have sanctuary cities, we may have to do that. Certainly that would be a weapon.
Of course, President Trump tweeted out his complaints, quote, "First, the Ninth Circuit rules against the ban, and now it hits again on both sanctuary cities. Both ridiculous rulings. See you in the Supreme Court." All right, let's sort this out. Let's bring in Karin Anderson. She practices immigration law as the director of the Neighbors Link community law practice. Very busy, I can imagine, lately. I want to read in a minute some of the statement that came from the White House and give you an opportunity to respond. But I imagine you got a lot of scared people coming in your offices now.
Absolutely. We're getting hundreds of calls from people who are frightened, who don't know what will happen. They don't know whether they'll be home when their children get home from school.
I want to read portions of the statement and give you an opportunity to separate some rhetoric and reality. And again, these are remarks that came from the White House press office today. Sanctuary cities, it reads, like San Francisco or New York, block their jails from turning over criminal aliens to federal authorities for deportation. Is that true?
No. It's not. First of all, the term sanctuary city is just a political trope. What cities are about and municipalities are about is sensible and safe law enforcement for their community. And that's what the judge's decision was about today, is making sure that state and local governments are empowered to enforce laws to best protect their community in general, rather than being hijacked in an unconstitutional manner.
The letter also went on to say, San Francisco and cities like it are putting the well-being of criminal aliens before the safety of our citizens. And those city officials who authored these policies have the blood of dead Americans on their hands. The judge's erroneous ruling is a gift to the criminal gang and cartel element in our country, empowering the worst kind of human trafficking and sex trafficking and putting thousands of innocent lives at risk. I'll give you an opportunity to respond however you want to that, but first, as I understand it, whether you're illegal or an American citizen, you commit a violent felony here, you're going to jail if you're convicted. And by the way, if you're here illegally, you're deported. You're convicted and either detained or you're deported. You're not given a pass to go walk the streets.
No, absolutely. That's why I feel that the president's comments in response to the court's ruling don't really dignify, they don't merit a response. I think what we can be guided by instead is Attorney General Sessions' own comments, which clarified that a city is only a quote-unquote sanctuary city if it's in violation of 8 U.S.C. 1373, which is a federal statute that prohibits state, local, and county governments from preventing their staff or employees from communicating with immigration enforcement. State and local governments aren't doing that. They communicate with immigration and cooperate with immigration when it's necessary. The idea is that information should not be disclosed because, contrary to what the president said, actually the best way to protect our cities and all of their residents whether they're U.S. citizens, permanent residents, or anybody else, is to make sure everybody feels safe to report crime. The way violent criminals run amok is if people are afraid to report that they've been victimized. And that's what happens when you have local law enforcement being hijacked in this way.
I think I know the answer, but if I read this, I'd expect that your office is being overrun with drug dealers, sex traffickers, violent felons. More than likely, it's parents with kids, people
Absolutely.
who work.
Yeah. I mean, the legal system in this country works. And what that means is that people who are convicted of crimes or charged with crimes, they go through a criminal process where they have rights. Those aren't the people we're seeing. I think it's really important for us to understand that the people that the president is characterizing this way are the same people who 6 months ago were candidates for immigration reform.
Finally, the letter goes on to say what this fight is about right now between, as the president sees it, his administration and the courts. He says this is a fight between sovereignty and open borders, between the rule of law and lawlessness, and between hardworking Americans and those who would undermine their safety and freedom.
Interestingly, I would agree with the president, but I think he's on the wrong side. I think it's people like immigrant advocates and all members of the legal community who stand up for community safety and for the well-being and safety of all people who are the defenders of law and order, and not the other way around. I think the president's conduct, particularly his language in the statement, is just completely inflammatory and just frankly doesn't even address any of the important constitutional issues that were raised in the judge's decision.
If you were able to take the president and attorney general and let him be a fly on your wall in your office for one day, do you think they'd feel the same way about the people that they're talking about, the lawless, the threats to American safety, American sovereignty? Do you think you could change minds just with a single day in your office?
We would definitely change minds in a single. I don't know if I would change their minds, but they're just two people, no matter how powerful they are. I think it's important for the public and for all of us to know that the people that I'm seeing every day in my office are the parents of your kids' schoolmates. They're the people who work at the stores that you patronize. They're your friends. They're the people who go to your church or your temple, etc. They're decent people, and you have no reason to fear them. And we need to be committed together to having sensible law enforcement policies that don't demonize people because of an immigration status in ways that make us all less safe, because people are afraid to report crime, afraid to interact with each other. I mean, I have a great case that I'm working on. We have a mom who is single parent. She's afraid she's going to get picked up and she might not be home when her kids get off the bus. And not only that, she's being threatened by a neighbor in a dispute, and she's afraid to talk to the police because she doesn't know what's going to happen. Every day we're doing Know Your Rights sessions where we're explaining people all the time, this is what you need to do when you interact with law enforcement. Don't carry an ID. Don't, understand what your rights are. And that creates, and at the same time we were trying to tell them that the police are here to protect them. It's very confusing for people.
And I think a very confusing time on a lot of fronts. Karin, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
And coming up next, the legal panel is here, and we're going to start by taking a look at the line between free speech, free expression, and censorship, how that is playing out on college campuses across the country.